Could you start off by telling us your name and your background?
My name is Sasan Asari, and I am of Iranian slash Persian background. I was born here in the U.S., lived here all my life, but both of my parents are Iranian.
So you noted that you're from an Iranian background, but you like grew up here in the U.S. Could you note some differences that you noticed between like Iranian culture in the home place versus like what you learned from your peers in society of like American culture?
Um, the biggest thing I think is growing up, uh, your parents. I think Iranian parents and foreign parents in general are more skeptical of the surroundings than people like parents that are born and raised here in America. They're much more protective, and I feel like they care a lot. Not necessarily care, but they are more careful in what they want their kids to get into and what they grow up in.
Okay.
And another thing I've noticed is people that come into this country work much harder than people that are born into this country because they want to make a name for themselves and they don't want to be known as like a foreigner all their life. They want to be successful, and that's what they come to America for. And that's what my dad came here for, to get his business started and for his family.
Would you say that people that come from different ethnic backgrounds or like other countries have more of an appreciation of like hard work and like getting there?
Yeah, I feel like because most of the people that come here don't have everything,
Mm-hmm.
so they want to work for it and make it to the top. And I'm not saying that people here like don't have the work ethic, but I feel like people that come into this country just work harder because they know they're already at the bottom of the totem pole because they're immigrants.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be already looked at differently.
So I guess you mentioned like that immigrants might have a harder time. Is that something that you've kind of observed or experienced personally?
Not me personally, because I mean I was born here and my parents gave me pretty much everything. But my dad definitely he struggled a lot first. He had to move his business here, there, and my mom too, especially the language barrier. That was tough for her. But I mean, you have to adapt if you want to make it work.
Mm-hmm. What were some things I guess you noticed like culturally that were different in like terms of what I guess Iranian culture or like what you personally your family values versus like what you've observed in other families or in your peers or your friends?
Probably the focus of like my family especially is really family orientated. Like we always want to be together and always have the rest of our family around us. When people here like grow up, their families all in different places, and that's like I think a big difference because we always have like family always around us, or just I feel like it's more family orientated.
Yeah. So you've just noticed like that I guess like you could say other cultures kind of value
Focus on family
family
a lot more.
than what you've noticed
Yeah,
here in the
yeah,
U.S.
yeah,
Do you have
definitely.
any examples of that?
Um,
Like have you noted any of your, I guess, friends, families, or something that don't seem as close knit as
yeah,
yours?
I mean, there's a lot of like friends that I have that there's a lot of problems in their family and like even just their immediate family, like mom, dad, and but like our culture, I feel like there's not as much divorce or like troubles in the family just because our values. I mean, we usually don't, especially Iranian culture. There's not much like early age dating, so like you're not marrying at a super young age, so you really know who you're gonna marry. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that helps a lot with the divorce rate and all that. So I feel like foreigners usually grow up with like both their parents and family all around them.
Okay. Have you personally like experienced a lot of Persian culture, or like have you immersed yourself in the culture kind of like your parents, or have you been more immersed with like U.S. culture, a combination of the two?
Well, I would have to say a combination because I've been to Iran 3 4 times, and um, I've gotten like a little bit of the culture, but probably not as much as I've got the U.S. culture. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
more Americanized, but I still have like the Iranian culture,
Mm-hmm.
running through me, I guess.
What have you noticed differences, I guess, in like Iranian culture versus like U.S. culture?
Well, there's the huge difference where like women wear the hijabs out, like wherever they go in public. And that's always takes some getting used to because like you don't see that here everywhere. And and the Iranian culture, I would have to say like a, probably a downside is um, females are not as powerful as they are here. Women are usually like not working, they don't vote, and they have to wear the hijabs.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's still behind in that sense. And education wise, the culture there is more you hit the books, you study hard, and like you go become like a doctor or engineer. Here it's more like freedom. You do what you love. So I mean, it's a mix of both for me.
So now that we've talked a lot about like the differences that you've observed and just like what similarities could you tell, if any, between the two cultures that you have observed firsthand?
Um, Similarities would be probably the emphasis on um, making a name for yourself. Like I know I said before, like immigrants tend to work harder, but people here in the U.S. probably, well, I mean, everyone wants to make a name for themselves. So people work hard and they do what they do, like their jobs and businesses and whatever. I feel like both cultures are very business driven and they want to be successful and cater to their families.
Okay. So like I guess in younger generations, like our generation, what differences have you noted between like younger Iranian generations between older Iranian generations?
Younger generations are definitely more Americanized. Um, the older generations are like the classic Iranians where um, their kids are, well, not their kids, but they grew up in Iran and they have they do all the prayers, the fasting, all that stuff. But I feel like the younger generation's kind of straying away from that and becoming more Americanized, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But a lot of the younger generations like refuse to wear hijabs and stuff like that. So they're becoming more rebellious and they want to, like over in Iran, they want to be like here. They want to have their freedom. Girls want to wear what they want. Guys want to like study what they want. It's
Mm,
basically like they're a little behind the U.S., but they want that freedom that the U.S. has.
yeah. So you're saying the cultures are more in terms of like how the younger generations are acting, they're becoming more synchronized. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of
definitely.
Western cultures blending in
Yeah,
there.
they're becoming much more westernized and um, probably because like they see all this stuff on TV and they're like, oh, we want to be like that, and so I mean, like you can't blame them.
Yeah. So you personally, I know there's a lot of stereotypes and prejudice around different cultural groups, and especially in light of recent things, people associate hijabs and stuff with like being Muslim, and then they associate being Muslim with like like terrorism or ISIS or something like that. Has your family ever experienced any personal discrimination or prejudice?
Well, me personally, like after 2 months after 9/11, I was at school, and this kid called me a terrorist for no, I mean, kids being kids, but I mean, it happens, and it's not the best feeling in the world, but I mean, people are gonna say what they want,
Mm-hmm.
and you shouldn't really. It doesn't really affect you, but when you're younger, it probably does. And my family, I mean, my dad's experienced stuff before because when he first moved here it was like 30 years ago, so it was even more like tension back then. So I'm sure he's experienced stuff, but he doesn't talk about it really.
Yeah.
But Muslims as a whole, like if there's anything that happens, like terrorist related wise, all Muslims get put into the same group. So we're all considered terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it happens, but gotta keep moving forward.
Have you ever noted any stereotypes, or what stereotypes or like assumptions have you noticed that maybe Iranian culture places on, not necessarily American culture, but like other cultures, if any?
Well, Iranians definitely stereotype Americans just like Americans do uh, Muslims or like Iranians. But you definitely see it now with all the stuff that's going on, Trump and all that. You definitely see Iranians listening to the media and listening to like what who says what, and they definitely see America as an enemy. Not an enemy, but like someone they
Like a threat.
yeah, like a threat. And um, Iranians probably have the stereotype that Americans are lazy and they don't work as hard. And if they had like what Iranians had, they would definitely um, be worse off, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that stereotype, of course. And there's, like you said, there's stereotypes everywhere. So
Interesting. Okay. Let's see. So you mentioned that you had a little bit of discrimination. I know that was a really young age. How did you handle that, and like, how do you think that your upbringing in your like house and like your Iranian, I guess, like cultural values maybe that were instilled on you as a kid, like helped? Do you think that helped deal with resolving that, or do you think that's just more?
yeah, my dad used to always tell me, um, if someone says something to you, don't about like especially about that stereotyping,
Mm-hmm.
don't let it get to you because they don't know anything about being Muslim. So that was kind of instilled in me at a pretty young age. Like they, especially like after 9/11, um, my dad always told me to just take the high road. And when it happened, I was mad and I was younger, so I didn't really like understand the whole thing. But it that those words helped me get through it and just you know be okay, not okay with it, but not show that it affected me
Yeah.
as much as it did back then.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone like told me something now, I wouldn't even like twitch or anything because I know they don't know anything about what a Muslim is or and what a terrorist is. Like they don't know the difference.
Do you think that your dad's upbringing and then his upbringing of you helped you kind of like, I guess, that culture that he was raised in and the same that you kind of were growing up at home helped you know how to handle that properly, or just like taught you the right
Yeah,
principles?
for sure. The way he came up, he lost his dad at a early age, but his mom definitely instilled those same values to like always be kind, be smart, and just always take the high road. So he instilled that in me at a very young age, and it's worked so far. I haven't had any problems. So
Would you say that's reflective of Iranian culture as a whole?
definitely.
Yeah.
Iranians tend to always be the more
Hospitable?
yeah, definitely. They're more like nice, kind people in general, and they don't want to be angry
Not
at
quick to
people.
judge.
Yeah, not quick to judge, and
Mm.
they just always take the high road.
Yeah.
I can't say always because I don't know everyone, but usually that's like one of the main
From what you've
staples
observed.
from
Yeah.
what I've been in and being in Iran around family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you see
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Would you say that that's like a big difference between American culture, or would you say like that's just more at kind of the individual upbringing? Like I guess like in U.S. culture.
I mean, you definitely see it in U.S. culture.
Uh-huh.
You definitely do see it, but I also think it depends on the family tree, and how they were brought up and what values they instill
Mm-hmm.
in you as a person, and you deciding if you want to listen to those and put those forward in your life.
Would you say that from what you observed, things are like I guess American culture is more accepting in a way than it
Of
was a while ago?
Iranian.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot more acceptance, especially with the way what the way America's trending.
Mm-hmm.
There's more acceptance of everything, not just different cultures. So you see a lot more love and a lot less hate than you used to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that has to do with, I guess, more exposure to it and just more knowledge,
Yeah, I mean,
or do you think it's just like people in terms are changing?
it's a little bit of both. I mean, people are starting to kind of see the Muslim people as, normal people.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's the way people are like changing and progressing.
Mm-hmm.
There's more acceptance than
Yeah.
back then. So
What, I guess, what discriminations and like prejudice have you observed? Maybe not necessarily directly to your family, but about maybe like Muslims, and like have you observed like in like high school or middle school, or like through your peers, have you seen firsthand or overheard stereotypes, prejudices, and discriminations?
not really. I mean, you see all this stuff on the news, like you see hate crimes, and you see people, like you see videos of people yelling at foreign people or something.
Mm-hmm.
You see that, but I don't think I've really heard much discrimination
From like people
yeah.
around you when you were growing up? No.
Not really, no. I mean, there's that, being called a terrorist, but like growing up in my time, it was past all the real tensions when Iran
Mm-hmm.
had the whole hostage crisis and all that stuff, where
Mm-hmm.
U.S. and Iranian tensions were pretty high. So I didn't really experience that, and my dad probably did, but he never really talks about it, so I wouldn't know.
You grew up in Florida for the majority of your life, is that correct?
Yes.
So would you say that, I know Florida is a very diverse state, you have a lot of like Latinos, you have a lot of other immigrants coming in. Would you say that the area you grew up in, because of diversity, caused like less prejudice than like say some other areas where there's not as much exposure? Or do you think it would have been the same regardless of where you were?
I
Like,
would
what state?
I would say Florida might not be the best place, just because I haven't witnessed or experienced it. I would say out when I used to live in Seattle as well, and out west, feel like they're much more accepting of every different kind of thing than Florida is in general. I mean, you have your different cultures here, but it's not as much as diverse as it is up there. So I would say I'm sure other people have experienced a lot worse here in Florida
Mm-hmm.
than out there. So, but me growing up, just my family, the way it was, I was sheltered, so it was away from those things. So like I went to a private school, and I didn't go to public school until I was in high school, so I didn't really, experience much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that people who maybe go to public schools or other areas that are of Muslim descent would experience more discrimination than you did?
I believe so, especially like I said after the whole 9/11. That's probably when it was the worst. I wouldn't necessarily say it's as bad now, and
Mm-hmm.
you still have your uh, kids that want to like bully everyone and say what they want to say, but you definitely don't see it as much now.
Yeah, you don't think it's as much of like racial malice or
Yeah,
like
yeah, for sure.
something like coming internally.
Yeah,
Okay.
at least not me and people that I know.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's still some out there, but
Just what you've
yeah, from
experienced.
firsthand
You
and
haven't
second
really.
hand.
So you've had a general positive
Yeah,
experience.
general positive.
Okay. Did you ever struggle, I guess, like when you first went to schools? Because I know probably before you went to public schools, you were just exposed to your family, um, and you probably grew up just with like those cultural values. Did you find it difficult to assimilate, or was it?
Yeah, definitely. I my first language isn't English; it's Farsi, which is the Persian language. But when I first went to school, I didn't really know English, so that and that's what in my kindergarten, preschool. But I had a really difficult time learning English and making friends because I hadn't really been exposed to the whole English
Yeah.
language and like American kids. So it was pretty difficult the first couple of years, and I would have a hard time going to school. But once I learned the English language and I got more comfortable around people, then it was easy. But the first couple of years was definitely rough.
Hmm. Would you say that people who come from two different backgrounds, ethnic or cultural, whatever, have more of an appreciation of other like races and cultures than just say someone exposed to just one side or the other?
Yeah, because you get to experience so much more. You
Mhm.
get to experience the best of both worlds, and it's definitely it's a learning curve, but I believe it's a good thing
Mhm.
that you have experience in a couple different cultures.
Yeah. You'd say like multicultural, you get
Yeah,
much more of an appreciation
much more.
and understanding. Yeah. Not only, I'm saying not only of like your own, but like of others outside of your own. You definitely think.
Yeah, you're definitely like, oh, I would want to learn about this and that just
Mhm.
because you have an experience of learning a different culture other than yours, and you get to really understand people. That's the biggest thing with me. I feel like once you understand a culture, you can understand a person, and you're
Mhm.
able to communicate and just make connections, and it's just a big thing.
Yeah.
If you're open to different cultures, then it opens up so many doors.
Hmm. Now, you said your parents are full Iranian and 100% Persian. Um, did they ever tell you about any like intercultural communication barriers or just like any problems they ran into when they first came here in the U.S.?
None that I can. I mean, my dad probably had a hard time starting his business here because he had to get a license, and like he had to re-get his license because Americans don't accept the Iranian license. So he had to do that over again, and trying to understand the whole American economy and real estate, buying this, buying that. I'm sure that was difficult, but
Mm.
that's probably the biggest barrier, I think,
So,
to say.
did your parents initially know? I know you mentioned before your dad like struggled initially. Did he come to the U.S. with any knowledge of English or?
Yeah, he went to, when he was in Iran still, he took English at school.
Okay.
So he had some knowledge, like a good amount of knowledge. And then he came here and went to school in Texas. So he learned a lot more English.
Do you think that other cultures focus more on like assimilating to us versus like when the U.S. tries to push learning other cultural languages? Like, do you think? Um,
Yeah, English is probably the most taught language,
mhm.
I feel like, for other people because a lot of people come to America. So, and America is like the land of opportunity. So everyone wants that
Mhm.
opportunity to make good and do good for their family or themselves. So I definitely feel like English is more pushed in foreign education than Americans push foreign education here.
Hmm.
So
Okay, so you would say like in other cultures, it's valued more to like learn,
English,
yeah, than it is here for us to
yeah,
learn
for
another
sure,
culture's language.
for sure.
Would you say that that in itself kind of reflects cultural values, or do you think like maybe that has a tie to um, like maybe underappreciating another culture, like that not being enough of a focus?
Um, probably, probably the underappreciation because once again, Americans are Americans, and they don't. That some a lot of people don't feel the need to be opened up to other cultures, so they either don't take language or don't bother to learn about other people. But I definitely feel foreigners have that drive to learn about the American culture because they want to come and be successful. So
Mhm.
I feel like they have that drive and they're open to learning about this American culture that they're one day probably going to step into and basically go into the fire.
Yeah. Would you say that immigrants have a harder time coming to the U.S. than like U.S. people do, maybe moving or like visiting other countries?
I I would say they both have a hard time because immigrants definitely have it hard coming here with
Hmm.
everything, but like Americans have a hard time going to other countries, especially like those diplomatic countries.
Hmm.
They don't really accept Americans, and you have to go through so much paperwork. Like me myself, um, when I go to Iran, I have to sign a bunch of papers and stuff saying this, that um, I can't be drafted into the military because if I'm there for more than 60 days, they can draft me into the military
Hmm.
because I'm a Iranian citizen.
Hmm.
So there's a bunch of paperwork and legal stuff. So they both have a tough time
Yeah.
going back and forth.
Which would you say would be harder, like Americans visiting another country or immigrants from another country visiting the U.S.?
Immigrants, definitely.
Yeah.
I think they have it harder just because there's so many things that could go wrong. And I mean, they could get stuck here.
Yeah,
And,
not as many
yeah,
translators.
yeah, not as many, and English. And
This is
so,
more worldwide.
and America is just a whole different planet than what people have at their own places. I feel like
Hmm.
because there's just so much here.
Yeah.
So
So you mentioned like that in Iran you had to sign something so that you don't go into the army, and that I guess would be one difference here in the U.S. because the U.S. doesn't have the draft
yeah,
anymore. You know, like you're not obligated to serve some time. Like I know in Israel, when you go there, you have to serve 2 years in the military or something like that. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. What I guess like if you could think of any more, I know I've asked this a lot, but like what differences do you know? Like, does Iran focus more on kind of retaining its people there? Like, you have to serve the country.
I don't know if this answers the question, but um, Iranian, like the Iranian government is uh, very strict. I want to say because you're either like, let's say you try to go on the internet and they can't see, but there's a lot of websites that are based here in America that are blocked on like Iranian
Mm-hmm.
internet. Just the government blocks it because they don't want the people to see what's going on here and what they're saying about Iranians. So there's not a lot of internet freedom, and they definitely want to keep most of their citizens there. They don't want people going to America and
Yeah.
just like not joining an enemy, but it's basically like you're leaving your country,
Yeah.
and so
I guess like a difference would be like the government has more of a grip
Yeah,
on the country there in
government
terms of a tighter grip.
Yeah, there's not as much freedom. Like social media is
Mhm.
basically irrelevant there.
Do you know any of the websites that are blocked over there?
I know
That are open?
Twitter
Uh-huh.
is. Facebook used to be, and some of it's censored, so
Really?
it's a lot. It's a lot different there.
So like they're kind of blocking, in a sense,
Like American
intercultural
propaganda,
communication.
I would say they're
Yeah.
blocking a lot of American propaganda, and it used to be worse, and they've
Mhm.
gotten a little more loose on their grip,
Mhm.
but it's still there, and it still affects people in
Mhm.
different ways.
Would you say that affects, I guess, relationships and like appreciation or like understanding of cultures? Because like that could be considered a block to
Yeah.
intercultural communication because
It's-
social media is worldwide.
It's hard to like get in touch with family just
Mhm.
because it's so easy with social media. All you do is find them, but like you have to go through like third-party apps like WhatsApp and just to like talk to family,
Mhm.
and it's just it makes it difficult to consistently talk to family or see them or see what's going on in their life just because they're not really as free to post as we are here,
Yeah.
saying what they're doing and how they've been. A lot of it's censored, like I said. So
Hmm. Would you say, from what you've observed, like things like that, like I guess the freedoms and liberties we have here, do you think coming from another culture that looking in here, people take that more for granted? Like, did you have more of an appreciation, I guess, like after learning that and then seeing? And do you think that people here take those rights and liberties and freedoms for granted?
yeah, for sure. Because I went there last time I went to Iran was 5 years ago, and that was like the peak of Facebook and Twitter was just popping off,
Hmm.
and just not being able to be on it like I was, it was definitely an adjustment. And when I came back, I was like, okay, this is what America's all about,
Hmm.
freedom. You can do what you want, you can say what you want, and that's definitely a downside of the whole Iranian culture and government.
Hmm.
It's you're you're basically being told what you can say and what you can't say.
So you'd say, I guess it's a more strict, rigid, like there's
Strict.
more guidelines in
Yeah,
terms of
there's
like,
rules and
uh-huh.
like stuff you have to follow. And here, people say what they want. And
Yeah.
it's it's much it's much more effective, I think, the way we do it here because you build up this anger with the people, especially the young kids, because the younger generations are rebellious already, and you're not letting them say what they want to say and put their thoughts out there.
Mhm.
So you just build up the anger, and it just leads to
Conflict,
conflict, and
violent outbreaks and stuff.
just don't you don't. That's why you see that in all these different countries because there's not that sense of freedom. They feel like they're trapped and they're being watched or being told what to do.
Hmm.
And especially, like I said, the younger generations are more active, more progressive, and they want change. And they're not able to voice their opinions, or they'll get like jail time or fined.
Yeah.
So I feel that pain that they
Mhm.
have over there, and I'm much more appreciative of being able to speak my mind and not get put in prison for it.
Would you say that religion is like a driving factor behind like what the rules or why the rules are in place in that country?
Yeah, because Muslims are the religion itself is very strict on like all the basic stuff like uh, dating and sex and just all that. You have to be a good person, a model citizen. Can't cuss, can't do this, can't do that, and people like you pray 5 times a day.
Yeah.
So it's just much more guidelines, rules. You follow them, and here, like, there's religion, but I'm not Christian, so I can't really speak on that,
Mm-hmm.
or like whatever other
Mm-hmm.
religion. But I don't really follow like all the guidelines. Sure, I'm Muslim, but I wouldn't say that
Mm-hmm.
I'm very religious. So there's that.
Yeah. Would you say that, like, I know there's like a blend of religions in the U.S. How would someone of another religion be treated if they were openly that religion, maybe in like Iran or like a culture where it's like Muslim dominated?
I would say now they wouldn't be treated any differently.
Okay.
Like people are more accepting. Like
Uh-huh.
people are here. There would be no action unless you're out there protesting and saying this and that about the Muslim religion itself, and you're out there like flaunting.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm sure there'd be some repercussions. But there's much more like acceptance. You
Yeah.
can go there being like you can go visit being a Christian and nothing would happen to you, just like here.
Yeah.
I'm sure people like there's those people that would say stuff, but
Would you
nothing major would happen.
would you think they would experience the same prejudices that maybe people who are openly Muslim here experience? Like, do you think they would experience it as severely as maybe people who are openly Muslim or like wear, like
Hijabs.
hijabs and like Islamic garb, like out in public? Do you think they'd experience the same prejudice in the U.S. as they would in Iran, or do you think like maybe it would be more severe here than it is there?
That's a tough question because I haven't really seen
Okay.
um, like Americans in Iran while I've been there,
Mm.
so I can't really speak on that. But I'm sure there would be those people that it would be the same like type of people that would say, "Oh, you're a terrorist here,"
Mm.
to "Oh, you're a terrorist there in Iran" to Americans.
Mm.
So I'm sure there's those people out there, but as a whole, I can't say.
Okay. So, in the two cultures you've observed and grown up with, you've had a lot of experience with both, it seems like. I guess what I'm trying to ask is what positives and negatives have you seen on both sides?
Negative for the Iranian culture, I would definitely have to say the um, the strict religion. A lot of kids that I know grow up and they don't experience things. They don't experience um, like what American kids experience. Sometimes they don't eat pork. I know that's not like a big deal, but like people like I mean Americans take that for granted, and we can't have that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's stuff like that and stuff you can't do. And your parents are usually more strict and rigid with rules and curfew and stuff like that. But a positive going off that is you grow up in a household that truly cares about what you do and how successful you are in the future, and they want you to be able to provide for your family just like they were able to provide for you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like growing up in my household, my parents did anything they could for me to live an easy life and not have to struggle, and that was instilled in me, and that's what I want to continue and keep the family name going in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm.
So they instill those values in you at a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
And American culture, positive is definitely the freedom to do what you want, say what you want, eat what you want, and just freedom overall. Negative is negative. I would have to say is the judgment. There's a lot of judgment in American culture. You see that with just people, um, people you walk by or people you barely know. Just there's a lot of judgment, and I feel like in Iranian culture, there's just more love
And acceptance.
Here, there's like you're questioned. An immigrant, you are looked at differently sometimes, and you're questioned differently, even by like authority, like police and stuff like that. But then again, that doesn't happen often, but there's still that factor that you go out and you feel like, oh, this person's looking at me because my skin's a different color, because I look different. So there's always that in the back of your mind as an immigrant. And I feel like that's for every immigrant. They come here and they're like, we're in a whole new world. It's not our place. Sometimes it hits you really hard, and that was
Yeah.
definitely the negative.
Another way, what you're saying is like immigrants definitely have it a lot harder
Yeah,
than people born
yeah.
here for
It's
sure.
hard to adjust,
Make a name for
make a
yourself.
name for yourself, adjust, and just not be affected by those type of people. Because there's always those type of people wherever you go, but you just have to just let it go. Don't let it affect you,
Hmm.
and you'll be fine.
I guess what do you want to instill, like pass on to your generation? Like you definitely want to hold on to those values.
Um, I think the biggest thing is treat people the way you want to be treated.
Hmm.
And if someone wants to be nasty and mean to you, just know that you're a better person than them,
Mm.
and they're gonna try to bring you down to their level. But just know, because you're different, and because you have different skin color, you talk different, you have an accent, it doesn't mean they're any better than you. You just gotta show them that you can do anything they can do. That's probably one of the things I would instill in my children and my family. Just don't let it get to you.
What would you say if you had a room full of people and you wanted them to know what the biggest thing about Iranian culture is? What would you say that is?
Um, just because we're Muslim doesn't mean we associate with terrorists. You Americans have people that go out there and have shootings, mass shootings, and you have those people in every culture. Just because they're Iranian or Arabic or Palestinian, it doesn't mean that we all associate. Like, we're not. Don't put us in one group.
Mm-hmm.
You have your crazy people, we have our crazy people.
Yeah.
So just look at us the same way you look at the rest of your fellow Americans, and don't judge us based on the actions of a small group of people.
Okay. All right. Thank you very
So,
much.
thank you.